Welcome back to reality. Put down the latte and turn off that hollow Follow Your Passion podcast. Today, we are dissecting an issue that the crowd gets completely wrong. An issue that's burning a hole in the wallets of half the population, yet nobody wants to admit it. Let's rewind to 2023. The media dubbed it the year of the girl. Why? Because Barbie, Greta Gerwig's masterpiece, hit $1 billion, painting the world pink and slapping the patriarchy in the face. Because Taylor Swift with the Eras Tour caused a seismic economic shift so massive, the Federal Reserve had to mention her in their beige book because she single-handedly revived local economies wherever she stepped. And because Beyoncé is running an entertainment empire that makes Wall Street tycoons tip their hats. Looking at that surface, you'd think, done, we won. The era of male dominance is over. The glass ceiling has been shattered. Wrong. Dead wrong. That's just the frosting on a stale cake. Look behind the stage lights of Taylor Swift and look at the cold, hard numbers in Silicon Valley or the skyscrapers of Manhattan. Women today graduate college at higher rates than men. Their GPAs are higher. They participate in the workforce more than ever. But, and here is the trillion-dollar but, why is it that when reaching the summit at the C-suite level, CEO, CFO, TCO in the Fortune 500, or as senior partners at heavy-hitting law firms like Kirkland & Ellis, women are still as rare as water in the Sahara? Why does a talented female surgeon or a fund manager at BlackRock still bring home less cash than her male counterpart, even when they hold the exact same degrees from Harvard or Yale? The mob out there, the lazy thinkers, will immediately scream, "It's discrimination. It's the patriarchy." Sounds good, right? Perfect for a viral tweet to farm some likes. But if the answer were simply discrimination, then why haven't massive corporations like Google or Goldman Sachs, places with armies of HR staff and DEI, that's
DEI policies, thick enough to be doorstops, managed to erase this gap? You can't solve a complex economic problem with protest slogans. You need a detective, a data detective.
Enter Claudia Goldin. She didn't walk onto the stage with a megaphone. She walked in with the 2023 Nobel Prize in Economics. Claudia Goldin, a Harvard professor, isn't a social activist. She's a pragmatic economic historian. She didn't just look at last quarter's report from Apple or Tesla. She did something crazier. She excavated labor market data from the last 200 years. What did she find? An ironic truth, a plot twist that silenced both the left and the right. Goldin discovered that the history of women making money isn't a straight line up like we imagine, from the dark ages to the light. No, it's a U-shape. Imagine 18th and 19th century America. When the economy relied on agriculture, women worked like crazy. They weren't 1950s housewives, they managed farms, sold dairy, wove textiles. They were the COO of the household. Labor participation was high, that's the left peak of the U. Then came the Industrial Revolution. Factories rose, work separated from the home. You had to go to a Ford plant or a Massachusetts textile mill to work strict shifts. Men went to work, women were pushed back home because they couldn't nurse a baby while operating a loom for 12 hours. Female labor participation nosedived. That's the bottom of the U. Then came the 20th century, the modern office and white-collar jobs. Women started climbing back up the right side of the U, but the ghost of the past still haunts the present. The real haymaker Goldin threw wasn't just pointing out the U-shape, it was exposing the true culprit of the modern wage gap. People think the cause is women choosing low-paying fields like education, nursing, while men choose to be AI engineers for OpenAI or crypto traders. That's only part of it. The truth is more brutal. Even when women work the same job in the same position as men, the gap widens after one specific event. It's not when they get yelled at by a boss. It's not when they get denied a raise. The event is the birth of the first child. Before becoming a mother, the income gap is almost zero. But the moment the kid shows up, the graph splits. Men continue to shoot up like a SpaceX rocket, women flatline or dip, and they never catch up. Why? Are women lazier after birth? Nonsense. They work twice as hard. The problem lies in a concept Goldin calls greedy work. This is the killer key. This is why Sheryl Sandberg, former COO of Facebook Meta, with her famous book Lean In, unintentionally sold women a pipe dream. Sandberg told women to sit at the table, to be aggressive, to be ambitious.
But Claudia Goldin says, Sheryl, you're wrong. The problem isn't women's attitude. The problem is the price of time. In our modern economy, from law firms in Chicago to investment banks in London, the compensation system does not pay linearly. It pays exponentially to those willing to sell their soul to the job. If you work 70 hours a week, You don't get double the pay of someone working 35 hours. You get triple, quadruple, quintuple. Why? Because you are on call. You can fly to Tokyo to sign a contract for Sony tomorrow morning. You can answer a client's email at 2 a.m. You are a robot that never shuts down. That is greedy work. And who cannot or does not want to play this greedy work game? The people who have to pick up kids at 4 p.m. The people who have to rush home when a child has a fever. The system doesn't punish women because they are women. It punishes anyone, male or female, who dares to have a life outside the office. But ironically, society and culture default that outside life as the woman's responsibility. The 2023 Nobel wasn't a pat on the back. It was a chilling warning. We are living in a trap designed by the structure of work, not just simple sexism. And if you think, oh, this only affects women, I'm a dude, I'm safe, watch out. You are the next victim of greedy work without even knowing it. You are selling your time cheap to fatten the shareholders of Vanguard and State Street in exchange for a heart attack at 50. So how does the engine of this trap actually work? Why did a tiny pill in the 60s change the game? And why do even the most modern couples eventually fall into this old rut?
Welcome back to The Matrix. If part 1 was the slap to wake you up, part 2 is where we dissect the engine running under your bed. Let's talk about a tiny pill. No, not the red or blue one. I'm talking about Enovid, the first birth control pill approved by the FDA in 1960. Claudia Goldin calls this the quiet revolution. Before the pill, women were like venture capitalists with their hands tied. How could you commit to 4 years of med school at Johns Hopkins or grind for a law degree at Yale if you knew an accidental pregnancy could blow it all up tomorrow? Too much risk, too much investment for a shaky future. But when the pill arrived, followed by abortion rights, Roe v. Wade, the risk equation flipped. Women started marrying later. They flooded elite universities. By the 70s and 80s, MBA classes at Wharton and Harvard Business School were packed with women. They had human capital equal to or even superior to men. So why, after all that prep, does the greedy work machine still crush their earnings? To understand this, look at 2 diametrically opposed examples, a top-tier law firm and a retail pharmacy chain. This is the classic example Goldin used to win the Nobel, so pay attention. In the left corner, representing the villain in this story, is corporate law and finance. Imagine you work for Kirkland & Ellis or Goldman Sachs. Who is your client? A CEO closing a $10 billion merger between Disney and Fox. When the Disney CEO calls you at 11 p.m. on a Sunday for a quick fix on a clause, can you say, "Sorry bro, putting the kids to bed, can you call my colleague Peter?" The answer is no. The client pays exorbitant fees for you. They want your brain, your experience, and your presence right now. You are unique. You are non-substitutable. Because you are non-substitutable, your time becomes incredibly expensive at awkward hours. If you work 80 hours a week, you don't get paid double the person doing 40. You get paid 5x. That is the nonlinear nature of greedy work. Winner takes all.
Now, look at the right corner. The unlikely hero, retail pharmacy. Look at CVS Health or Walgreens. You are a pharmacist. You have a fancy degree. One fine day you get sick, or your kid has a school play. You call in sick. What happens? A customer walks into CVS to buy amoxicillin. Do they care who hands them the drugs? The answer is no. They just need the right drug, the right dose, and the right advice. Why can pharmacy do this? Because they standardize the data. The patient records are on the CVS cloud. Pharmacist A can hand off work to pharmacist B in a heartbeat without killing productivity. Pharmacist A and B are perfect substitutes. The result? A female pharmacist working 30 hours a week at CVS makes an hourly wage almost identical to a male pharmacist working 60 hours a week. There is no massive bonus for killing yourself. The gender pay gap in US pharmacy is now among the lowest. This is the engine Goldin found. The gap doesn't come from your boss hating women, it comes from the structure of the job. Jobs that demand continuous presence and non-substitutability, litigation lawyers, CEOs, McKinsey consultants, have massive gaps. Jobs that allow flexibility and easy substitution, pharmacists, dermatologists, IT coders, have smaller gaps. But the tragedy doesn't stop there. It creeps into the bedrooms of the most modern couples. Imagine a power couple. Husband is a director at a VC firm in Silicon Valley, say Sequoia Capital. Wife is a marketing director at a big tech firm. Both earn well. Both are progressive. They swear to split chores 50-50. Then the first baby arrives. The kid gets a fever on Tuesday afternoon. Who leaves work? This isn't about feelings anymore, it's cold, hard economics. The husband's job at Sequoia is greedy work. If he misses the meeting with the next unicorn founder, he loses a promotion worth millions. The penalty for absence is huge. The wife's job, hypothetically, is slightly more flexible, or simply pays a little less at that moment. They sit down and do the math. To maximize household income, the logical move, economically, is for the husband to go full throttle on the greedy track and the wife to step back onto the flexible track. And boom, the wife falls onto a lower income curve. The husband flies up the high income curve. The gap widens, not because the husband is a patriarch forcing her to wash dishes, but because the greedy market forced them to make that choice to protect their joint bottom line. They become a traditional 1950s couple, even though they live in a 2025 penthouse and drive a Tesla.
Welcome to the big picture. If you think greedy work is just kitchen table talk for rich couples in New York, you're looking at the world through a straw. Claudia Goldin's theory doesn't just explain why your paycheck is light. It explains why economic superpowers are trembling. It explains why China is panicking over an aging population, why Japan is sinking, and why Silicon Valley is creating a tech aristocracy completely detached from reality. Let's start in East Asia, where greedy work isn't just a culture, it's a religion. Look at China. For years, tech tycoons like Jack Ma of Alibaba praised the 996 culture, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week, as a blessing. That is the most extreme version of greedy work. If you want to rise at ByteDance, TikTok's parent, or Tencent, you have to sacrifice your entire life. The result? Chinese women, highly educated, smart, and ambitious, looked at that slave contract and said, no thanks. They realized that in this 996 system, if they have a kid, their career dies instantly. There is no balance or flexibility here. So they chose an extreme economic solution, a birth strike. This is a massive system glitch. Birth rates in China, Korea, and Japan are nosediving to world record lows. Governments are desperate to encourage babies, but they don't understand, or choose to ignore, Goldin's lesson. You cannot force people to work 72 hours a week of greedy work and expect them to produce the next generation of workers. The two goals cancel each other out. A rigid labor market is choking the demographic future of an entire region. Samsung and Toyota are still running on the old OS, rewarding men who sit in the office until midnight. Women are pushed to the fringe, and the economy loses half its elite workforce.
Now, fly to the US and Europe to see different variants of the glitch. In the US, greedy work is creating horrific social polarization. In World A, employees of Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, or senior engineers at Google. They accept the rules. They grind, fly globally, answer emails at 3 a.m. In return, they make bank, live in gated communities, and pay $60K a year for private schools. In these families, usually only one person works the greedy job, or they hire a fleet of nannies to run the home like a subsidiary. In World B, the gig economy, or those pushed out of the race because they have families to care for. The wealth gap widens not just because of skill, but because of the ability to sell specific hours. This fuels political rage and populism. And Europe? The old continent tried to fix the glitch with blunt force. France and Germany limited work hours, mandated long vacations, and generous parental leave. Basically, they tried to outlaw greedy work. The result? The gender pay gap in Scandinavia is lower, quality of life is higher, but the cost? A lack of explosive innovation. You don't see a Tesla, Amazon, or Nvidia born in Berlin or Paris in the last 2 decades. Why? Because disruptive innovation often requires that initial phase of obsession, of sleepless nights, of extreme greedy work. Europe chose equality and stability, but traded away economic dynamism. So where do we stand? We are stuck between two currents. The Asia-US model, fast growth via burnout leading to demographic crisis. The European model, more equal but slow and lacking punch. The world is scrambling. Salesforce and PwC are testing remote work, but Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan is screaming for people to get back to the office to maintain hustle. The model is broken. We cannot run a 21st century economy with 20th century HR thinking that assumes every employee has a wife at home handling everything.
Welcome to the finish line. We've traveled through 200 years of history. We've seen the enemy is not men, not women, but the structure of greedy work. Now, the million-dollar question: what the hell do I do with this info?
You can't change Congress tomorrow. You can't force the CEO of JP Morgan to change culture overnight. But you can change your personal strategy right now. Here is the blueprint to survive and thrive in the era of greedy work, based on what Golden taught us. 1. The pharmacist strategy. Systemize yourself. Remember the pharmacy example? The key was perfect substitutability. Old school advice said, be indispensable. Fatal mistake. If you are the only one who can fix the server at 2 a.m., you are a prisoner. You get paid well, sure, but you sold your soul. Use tech, Slack, Notion, Asana, GitHub to document everything. Build a team where others can jump into your role when you're gone without the machine crashing. When negotiating, don't just negotiate money, negotiate process. Say, I want to build a system so this marketing team runs on autopilot even when I'm out. If you're a freelancer or a consultant, don't sell time, sell outcomes. Don't be the hourly lawyer, be the solution-selling pharmacist. 2. The relationship M&A, mergers and acquisitions. This is the hard part. Marriage in Golden's economic view is an M&A deal. Don't wait until the baby is screaming to look at each other and ask, who quits? The market will force you into the short-term profit solution, higher earner stays, lower earner quits, and the trap snaps shut. Sit down and ask, whose career is greedy, whose is flexible, or do we take turns? Some power couples outsource the domestic work entirely to stay on the greedy track. Expensive but fair. Some choose the relay race. 5 years I grind for Amazon, you stay flexible. The next 5 years I consult, you launch your startup. Don't let love blind you to the math. Plan like a CFO.
3. The remote leverage. The pandemic and the rise of Zoom Teams is the gift Golden talks about. It lowers the cost of flexibility. You can now close a deal without flying to Tokyo. This means you can participate in greedy work without 24/7 physical presence. Hunt for remote-first or true hybrid companies, Airbnb, Spotify, Shopify. Prove value by outcome, not FaceTime. If you bring in million-dollar sales, your boss cares less if you're at Starbucks or at home. 4. Know your game. Finally, be honest. If you want to be a partner at McKinsey, accept the greedy work rules. Don't whine about work-life balance. The price of that seat is your time, but if you want freedom, get off that track. Don't envy the paycheck of the people selling their lives. Choose the linear path, own your life. There is no free lunch.
Claudia Golden didn't give us a treasure map. She gave us a compass. The gender pay gap won't vanish tomorrow, but by understanding greedy work, you can stop blaming fate and start redesigning your life. Don't let the system back you into a corner. Understand the rules to break the rules. The world doesn't need more robots working 80 hours a week only to crash. The world needs people who are awake, who use tech leverage and substitution to create value without selling their souls. That is how you win, not by working harder, but by working smarter with the mindset of a Nobel Prize economist.